Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I want to address a couple of questions I've gotten from viewers that wanted to know my opinion on whether or not I had concerns regarding the fishing industry. In their comments, they provided some additional information that suggested what their concerns were. And I have similar feelings with some of those, but I've got concerns, across the sport as well that I think need to be adjusted to get to the next level. I want to make fishing a household name. I want to get it up there with basketball and football and baseball, but I think we've got a long ways for that before we can get to that level. But I think it's possible, and I think there's things that we can do to really ramp it up, and there's things we need to address to help get it to that next level. So that's what I want to talk about today, are the concerns that I have. The first biggest concern that I have is the overall cost to fish these days. Now, obviously, you don't need to invest much to actually go fishing, but there is substantial amount of cost in fishing these days. The price of rods and reels continues to go up. The cost of line, the cost of bait and tackle, everything continues to go up and get significantly more expensive. Not to mention the boats, the motors, the electronics, everything that else goes on the boats. I mean, even the kayaks, the prices of kayaks continue to increase. So in order to actually get out on the water, if you want to have some sort of boat or kayak or canoe, the cost to get that is really increasing as well. When I started tournament fishing at the professional level 12 years ago, I was paying substantially less in entry fees and substantially less in overall expenses to fish. And I was fishing for quite a bit more money when it came to the payout. So over 12 years, I can tell you personally that the cost to fish, the expenses, the entry fees has almost doubled, whereas the payouts has actually gotten lower. So it's really hard for me to sit here and say that the expense aspect of fishing is justified. Like it would be justified if the cost to fish is doubled in that amount of time and the payouts doubled, but it isn't that way. They've actually shrunken. So it's really a difficult thing to address in the sport right now. I think it's really hard to get a lot of people interested in the sport to start fishing at the local level and work their way all the way up to the professional level when all of the levels payback are terrible. A local level, you may have $150 or $200 entry fee, and then the cost to go and practice, the cost of all the gear and the cost of everything to do it might be $500-$600 to fish that one tournament. And in order to win that money back, you got to come in the top three. So the reality is, at all levels of tournament fishing right now, it's a losing endeavor. There is more money being lost than there is being won, and that's a major issue that needs to be adjusted. If you want to keep people in the sport, payouts need to be increased dramatically. You need to be giving, the majority of people need to be winning some money when they walk away. I'm not saying the entire field, but when people get a check, it should cover their expenses and it should make them want to continue to come back. And right now, we don't have that. So that's a major issue, is just the overall expense to fish continues to go up. It makes it harder. It's not even just the actual fishing equipment. You look at what it costs to fill up your truck with gas, to fill up your boat with gas, the cost of fishing licenses, the additional costs that aren't even really fishing related but are mandatory, whether it's your fire extinguishers, your life jackets, any other sort of safety devices that you need to have. There's a lot of costs that go into it, your fishing licenses. So expenses is probably my number one concern regarding the fishing industry. The second has to do with overall involvement, the number of participation in the sport. When you compare the sport of fishing actually at a tournament level to other sports, so you look at high school fishing versus the number of kids that play basketball, or the number of kids that play whatever sport you want to choose, it's actually not a very high number. So we're still very much a smaller overall community of actually people that want to compete. There may be more people that fish, but I'm talking about people that actually want to tournament fish in this case. So we need to get more involvement. We need to continue to bring people into the sport, which we're seeing with high school and college, but we need to keep them after they graduate. We need to keep them in the sport. I think a lot of times we see those kids, because the cost to fish is so much, they don't continue after they graduate high school or after they graduate college. So it's something that has just gotten out of hand, in my opinion. The third biggest concern has to do with the fact that we are growing as a sport, but we don't have criteria as to what a professional is versus a non-professional. I personally think we need to have some sort of criteria, whether it's like golf has a PGA Tour card, maybe we need to have an MLF Tour card, something that states to not just the fans and the other anglers that you're a professional angler, but more importantly, to the potential sponsors and industries that want to invest in the fishing industry. We need to have something that separates anglers apart. You know, if you're a professional angler, in my opinion, what that means is you're primarily making your living through fishing means, whether that's tournaments, guiding, content, whatever it is. If it's fishing related, but it's your primary source of income, at that point you can consider yourself a professional angler. But we have nothing that states that. I can tell you personally, I've run into sponsor issues in the past working with companies that were new to the sport, so they were non-endemic. And when, you know, I may have gotten in the door, and when I finally got to the point where I was talking to the marketer in charge, it ended up not going the way I thought, because the response was, well, we've worked with fishermen in the past and we didn't like the results. And once I realized that the anglers they've worked with in the past were barely, you know, nothing more than a local angler, at that point, you know, I feel like I was devalued because somebody else didn't necessarily hold up their end of the bargain. But you can't blame them when they don't have the exposure at the local level that somebody does at the professional level. So it's something we need to address. Had there been some sort of tour card that that marketer could ask for that would indicate, hey, this person is a professional, then that could have maybe been a situation that wouldn't have resulted in that manner, because that local angler wouldn't have been able to get that tour card. It's just one of those things where we need to have some separation in the sport so that everyone knows who everyone is. You know, if you have, there's no question about it. If somebody says, hey, I play for the Chicago Bears, that they're a professional NFL player. We don't have that. Just because you state that you fish, you know, the Elite Series, or just because you fish the MLF BPT Tour or the Pro Circuit, doesn't necessarily even make you a actual full-time fisherman. I think that there's really good criteria, justification to say that you are a full-time fisherman, but there's nothing that specifically states it. So really, there's no way to separate myself from Kevin Van Dam or a local angler. You know, if all three of us walked into a non-endemic marketing office and they had no clue what bass fishing was, all three of us would potentially have the same shot at that sponsorship if the marketer didn't really even follow up on the criteria. Obviously, if they looked at it, they'd see Kevin Van Dam as the most the most well-rounded angler there. But my point is, we need to have something in the sport that helps really just justify who professional is and who's not professional, so that everyone sees a direct career path and that everyone from the outside understands who they're talking to. Another concern that I have really is about the sport as a whole is we're not that TV friendly. We're not that fan friendly. And what I mean by that is, yeah, it's all great to watch live fishing on TV, but you're never going to see NBC or CBS or ESPN put an 8-hour fishing tournament on the air. It's too big of a block. It's just not going to happen. I think the reality is we're not that TV friendly in that case. So, you know, maybe there's things you can do to cut down the length of a tournament. I'm really not sure how that would come into play, but that's a concern of mine, is that you're not going to see us mainstream until you see us on TV. And we're not going to be on TV if they got to book an 8-hour block. Like, it's just not going to happen, in my opinion. I also think from a fan friendliness standpoint, we're out isolated on the water fishing in a boat all day. So it's really hard to interact that much with fans. In fact, I'm almost more encouraged not to interact with fans during a tournament because I don't want to engage in any sort of discussion that may provide me with information that I'm not allowed to get. So therefore, I almost would rather not engage in conversation with fans during a tournament week or in the weeks or months leading up to a tournament. There's an issue there with the sport. We should be out engaging everybody that we can, but in fact, we're actually trying to stand back and be more standoffish with the fans. It's something that I think needs to be addressed. It's a concern that I have with the sport. And the last thing really comes down to the playing fields, guys. We are a growing sport and we are just absolutely pounding on our resources. The lakes that are out there that are tournament lakes are continuing to get beat up really bad. Uh, they are handling the pressure, but fishing as a whole is getting tougher on most of these lakes. So I would like to see either the creation of more bodies of water or maybe changes in tournament fields, at least at the professional level. Right now, we're seeing 160 boat tournaments in the pro circuits that I fish. If you look at the AAA circuits, where you've got the Bass Opens or the Toyota Series, you're looking at 225 to almost 300 boats. That's a ton of pressure on a lake, but more than anything, there aren't that many lakes that can handle that many boats. So if we cut back field sizes or create more circuits or just create more qualifying criteria that maybe limits fields to 50 boats, that opens up so many more lakes across the country. It now means you can go to a 5,000 acre lake and have a 50 boat tournament. You really could do that versus saying, you know what, we're going to continue to hit the 30 major tournament lakes throughout the country and pile in 300 tournaments onto those lakes. It's really becoming difficult. We need to make adjustments, in my opinion, in order to help the resources. So I do feel like the playing field, which is our lakes and rivers, is something that needs to be adjusted in the future. So I really feel strongly that the sport is growing and there's really good things out there for us to move into, but we need to address a few of these topics in order to retain the people in the sport, to retain the new anglers that are coming in and they're like it, but they don't have the money to get into it, or they don't have the resources to do it. There's just a lot of things that I do think need to be adjusted, but I think we're on the right path. I just think we can make some adjustments faster that will help us get to where we want to go sooner. So guys, in the comment section, what are your concerns with the sport of fishing? I would love to hear them as well, so please put them in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, share it on your social media pages, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned for another video tomorrow.